Exactly. But to identify what moments are more important than others is also extremely important to be able to do that. It's like, aha, these beat moments are the most important. And then
Mhm.
the other moments are of secondary importance. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the fact that all three line up, it's the lining up, it's the hitting of the target. That's the most important thing. And just doing that is going to represent an 80% improvement in the quality of your technique. All right. So, Jim, you're a guy that seems like he's always working on his technique, trying to get better.
That's me, except for the days when I'm not, but sometimes I am, so you know.
Yeah. I think that we all kind of want to get better. And I thought we could do a little review of fingerwork fundamentals,
Oh, sure.
and then we can talk about an idea that brings it all together.
Yeah, I'm all for that, absolutely.
It's an idea that I call target practice.
Target
Dun dun
practice.
dun. And I only call it that as of like a couple days ago.
Yeah.
No, but I always sort of have. So anyway, fingerwork fundamentals, right? There's a variety of components when we play the bagpipe, when we do the fingerwork on the bagpipes. By the way, I want to tell you a story before we
Yeah,
take off.
stories are good. Yeah, do tell a
So
story.
I'm down in the basement lair yesterday. I'm teaching Dojo you, right? I was about to pick up my chanter to start to play, and I blew in, and I suddenly felt something wriggling on the tip of my tongue.
No.
Yes. And I was like, "Pleh, pleh." So this thing flies out of my mouth and lands directly into my coffee cup. And it was a humongous earwig with giant
Oh,
pinchers
dude.
that was
Dude.
inside my practice chanter overnight.
Way to
It,
bring
and
the
it
what a
and
nightmare.
it ruined my coffee, and it ruined my coffee too, because when I spit it out, it didn't land like next to the coffee or on the ground. No, it landed exactly in my coffee. Like, what the hell?
Oh man. Andrew, I'm so sorry. That's so gross. And I'm great. Thanks a lot.
So
Now I'm gonna have to turn the top of my chanter around and blow it out every single time I pick it up now for the whole rest of my
yeah,
life. Yeah, I'm gonna be having nightmares about that, dude. Jeez. Well, I've
it
worried
was it
before
was
about a spider or something. Earwig's even worse.
it was surprisingly not as bad as I thought it would be. It's been about 24 hours since it happened, and I've moved on with my life. There it
It
is.
might stick with me a lot longer than it sticks with you. And sometimes things are like that. It's worse in the imagination than it is in reality. But my goodness, we've just terrorized our audience, I think.
There's that. I just thought it would be a good story to lead off with.
It's a good story. It's good. It's good as in it's like gripping, pulls you in. It's gross. It's disgusting. It's not good in that way.
Yeah. So speaking of gripping, Jim,
Mm.
that reminds me of bagpipe fingerwork fundamentals.
Ooh, that was smooth, Andrew. You are on top of it.
Yeah.
That was good.
Maybe we could start with a little brain dump. When I say fingerwork, fundamentals, bagpipes, like what are some of the things that come to mind for you?
Oh, drills. When you say fundamentals, I think to myself like scales. You say finger
What
work, I
kind of
think like,
stuff are we what kind of stuff are we drilling and skilling though?
oh, doublings,
It's funny you should
tackums,
mention that first.
any of
Yeah,
that kind of
that's
stuff.
hilarious.
F
Okay, what else we
doublings,
got?
uh, yeah, burls, throws, just all of the embellishments. That's what I'm thinking.
Yep,
I'm thinking we're gonna get out the practice
all the
chanters and
things.
we're gonna go, okay, we're gonna do a scale. We're gonna do,
EEs, right?
yep, GDEs for sure. Yep, all that kind of
For
stuff.
sure. Yeah, what else we got?
Like one of those scale things where you go like, here's a note, there's a grip. Here's a note, there's a grip. Here's a note, there's a grip. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. What else we got? Anything?
That's it. Isn't that everything?
Sure. And then, anyway, those components come together in various ways to make our various tunes, right?
Yeah, yeah. But
Like,
what is a tune
it's,
if not a jumble of notes and embellishments?
yeah, interestingly, there are systems and subsystems that come together to make a tune. By the way, some of the stuff you missed in your list of fingerwork fundamentals is just the basic navigation of the scale. That's something that it's easy to take for granted once you can do
Yeah.
it. But like, even changing one note at a time can be tricky. But then once we start to skip multiple notes at a time, and the more fingers are involved in a note change, the more difficult that note change tends to be. For example, what's the most difficult note change on the pipes?
Does it have to be consecutive notes, like two that are next to each other? Or can it be two notes that are separated
No,
way, way
any
apart?
the most difficult note change between any two notes. What would it be?
I think it's going to be. I'm running through basically anything that is either a C or a D, and then to which note on top. Probably C to A is a contender. C to high A. E to F could be a contender. Just because of how many fingers are moving.
I
Have you
think
already done
that,
the
so
math? Do
I
you know which
think
one it is?
D, I think it must be, and I haven't actually done the math until now, but it must be D to high G or D to high A.
Yeah.
Must be
Oh,
difficult.
yes. That is a lot. Yeah.
And then my rationale for this is that it has 6 fingers that need to move synchronously
Yeah.
in a single instant in order to occur. So D to high G or high A must be the most difficult, maybe. And then I'll entertain arguments for or against it, but generally speaking, they tend to be the most difficult. And then what happens if it doesn't go well? Or when a note change doesn't go well?
Aside from
A
just
very
that note change sounding sloppy, it could throw you off too. So it could
well,
have further.
it could throw you off. Yeah. But even in the most objective sense. And by the way, it doesn't sound sloppy, Jim. We have a name for what happens when a note change doesn't go well. What's that called?
Crossing sounds.
Very nice. You're a student, Jim, today. You're playing the role of a student. Yeah, we would call that a crossing noise. And interestingly, you could get into the weeds on that, and you might, well, technically the note change could be sloppy without a crossing noise, but I would still call that a crossing noise. We call that a phantom crossing noise when there's no like explicit sound, but instead you just have a moment where, let's say, for example, when we're going from D to the high G, if I lift these fingers way too soon, right, there's going to be a moment of slop before I return the fingers down to the holes the way that we need to. So note changes are a big element of fingerwork fundamental technique, right? And we also have just basic grace notes. Okay. And to be able to play them well is also really important. What are some qualities of a good grace note, Jim?
Oh, it can't be too long, but it also shouldn't be too short. It's like just is a real
It
say.
should be too short. Like we want that
Yeah.
grace note to be we want
A
that
little
grace note
blip.
to be infinitely small. Yeah, we want
Yeah.
that grace
Okay.
note to be infinitely small. The foundational 3 things with fingerwork fundamentals all have to do with infinitely small moments in time. It's very fascinating. So for me, at the absolute ground level, we have basic rhythm and the basic beat. Okay. But what is the beat, right? If we drill into it, the beat is an infinitely small moment in time upon which musical elements might be built, but it's an infinitely small period in time. You can get into the weeds on this too. You could be like, John Bonham played on the back of the beat and all that stuff. It's like,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
what you really mean is he played behind the beat. Okay. There's no back of the beat, people. Okay. Anyway, I'm an extremist. But the beat is an infinitely small thing. For example, if you have a different interpretation than the beat than me, what does that actually mean? It actually means that we're not going to be in unison when we play together.
Yeah.
Is that necessarily the end of the world? I'll let you be the judge. But if I have a different idea of where the beat is than you do, then we won't be playing in unison together. And therefore, in order to play in unison together, we have to have an idea of the beat that's exactly the same. And then for all intents and purposes, in order for it to be exactly the same, it would need to be an infinitely small thing that gets lined up between the two of them. You following me so far?
Following. Yes, sir. I'm also thinking
right,
that
now-
it's interesting that just being able to navigate the scale didn't come to my mind right away, and maybe that's pretty telling on me.
Yes. And you're also completely prepared to let me not mention rhythm at all. It's fascinating. It's fascinating, right? So bagpipers tend to have the importance of the set of fundamentals that we use, certainly subconsciously and possibly even consciously. They tend to rank the importance of the fundamentals in almost exact reverse order.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's fascinating and frustrating. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm working on my embellishments. It's like, yeah, but dude, like your rhythm is not even close. And they're like, what are you talking about? Okay.
I mean,
but anyway,
yeah.
Rhythmically, right? In order to line up 2 musical things, we have to have that infinitely small target. We have to have that bullseye that we're going to hit. By the way, that's a little preview to the idea of a target, right? We've got that bullseye. But then if you go to scale navigation next, and we're talking about just switching from note to note, that's it, folks. Like forget about all the other stuff. If we're just switching from note to note, what are we actually talking about? We're actually talking about synchronizing multiple fingers, not always multiple. Sometimes it's just a single finger, but we're talking about most note changes. We're moving several fingers. And then when do they have to move, Jim?
It's exactly the same time. an infinitely
Exactly.
small moment, just like, damn.
Right. And then I get it, right? A lot of people teach that like when you do a note change, there are actually some fingers that move before others and blah, 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 and this thing. But that's all workarounds to avoid crossing noises. I don't subscribe to that idea. I subscribe to the idea that what we actually need, in theory, in the perfect world, we need all of those fingers to move at exactly the same time. Otherwise, there will be sloppiness in the note change. Like that's what we need. If we were in a universe where it was easy to exact perfect control over these fingers, what we would be shooting for is for those fingers to move at exactly the same time. So like when we go from low A to C, right, the low A finger leaves the hole at the exact moment the C fingers strike the hole.
Yeah.
And it would be exact. Okay. If it's inexact in one direction, we have an explicit crossing noise. And if it's inexact in the other direction, we have an implicit crossing noise. Now, even if you don't perfectly agree with that, folks out there in the listening ether, see if you could at least follow my thought experiment with me, okay? Because I'm going somewhere with this. So the note changes, right, are another thing that involves an infinitely small point in time where things have to occur. It has to be crisp and definitive. And by the way, the listener, okay, the audience, which by the way might be you, but the audience, right, that change is something that's audible as well, right? When we switch from one note to another, that's an audible change. Notice how if we just play low A and we don't move any notes, the audience is not going to hear any audible change. They're not going to hear any rhythm. It would just be a static tone, which seems obvious, but it's kind of important. Especially because what you sometimes say is, oh, the low A is on the beat. That might be something that you might say about a low A. It's like you got to put that low A on the beat. But that's actually not correct, is it? What do we actually need to put on the beat? This is a preview to my overarching point.
I guess the note change, the change
low
itself.
A. Exactly, Jim. You are correct. The low A doesn't go on the beat. What goes on the beat? What goes on the beat is the change from the previous note to the low A. So when we say the low A goes on the beat, it could actually be potentially quite confusing. Like, what the hell do you mean?
I've got my brain tied in knots, like I'm sure a lot of us have before with this when it comes to grace notes. Man, where is this actually happening? And do I want the beat to be where my finger is up or where it's down? And so I haven't thought about it with the note changes. So thanks for opening up a whole nother, I don't know, a whole nother tunnel for my brain to get lost in next time I'm playing.
Well, it's an infinitely small, that's why it must be an infinitely small moment in time, because anything more than that, then you have to ask the question, is it the end of that moment or the beginning of that moment that needs to align? Which brings me to grace notes, right? So Jim, you expressed some confusion about grace notes. For me, there's no confusion. And that's important, right? Because we want to understand like the basic idea. So for me, a grace note is not something that needs to be not too long, but also not too short. That's not what a grace note is. By the way, this is bagpipe grace notes. So Western music grace notes, potentially completely different. We're talking about bagpipe grace notes. These are articulations. Okay, you could think of it like tonguing a note on a clarinet. How long is the tongue of the clarinet? You could also think of it like the striking of a drum. When you strike a snare drum, how long is the strike?
I mean, it's like it should be like no time.
Or we could just clap our hands. How long is the clap? What makes that an interesting question is we take for granted, obviously, easily, that the clap has no duration. It's a thing that demarcates an infinitely small moment in time. Like the whole point of a clap is that it has no duration. Now, if you record the clap and you zoom in on the waveform, you could see that, oh, the clap actually does have a duration. Okay? But how do we think about it? We think about it as if it doesn't. And it's an important point. It's a very important point. So we think about something like a clap as if it has no duration. Like if you play drum, maybe I understand this well because I spent so long playing drums. I played a lot of drums when I was younger as well, in addition to piping, and I played drum kit and stuff, right? And it's like the duration of these notes. When you're a drummer, right, the duration of a strike is infinitely small. That's how you think of it. Now, what about the space in between those drumming strikes? That absolutely has very important durations and so on, but the actual strike of the drum is an infinitely small thing. Okay, now, we're going back to grace notes. The grace notes are how we articulate our sound. It's a rhythmic device, okay, that we're going to use. And the duration of a grace note is infinitely small. There is no beginning and then there is no end. No, there is no, the end and the beginning are the same.
Yes, I see. Maybe those are two ways to say the same thing, but I see what you mean. Yeah.
No, I think so. I think I might have accidentally said the opposite. But what I meant to say was the end and the beginning are the same. And it's very important for us to think about that. And that's what we think about when we play a grace note. So once a grace note starts to become too long in duration, it starts to have a beginning and it starts to have an end. And therefore, it starts to compete with the melody notes themselves for time.
Yeah, it becomes a
For
note
real
and
estate.
no longer a grace note.
And by the way, turning a grace note into a note is not against the rules. You're allowed to do it. But we're talking about from the fundamental perspective here. That's what we're talking about. Like the basics. Okay. And the basics of a grace note, the default of a grace note is an infinitely small thing that we're going to use to articulate either the separation of two notes of the same pitch, but we can also just articulate any note we feel like, even if there's a note change that also occurs at the same time. Those are three very important things. Okay. Are we good so far, or do you have some follow-up questions before we proceed?
No, I think it makes sense. The follow-up question in my head is basically, how do I play a grace note, which I think we'll either cover or needs to be a separate topic. So carry on.
I'll tell you how I do it. So technically, under a microscope, all right, because now the debate becomes, what do we line up with the beat when we play a grace note? Do we line up the lifting of the finger, or the closing of the finger?
Right, that's exactly what I have in mind. Yeah,
that's the age-old question. I can tell you what I do, which is, for me, it's the closing of the finger that would technically perfectly align with the beat. However, because my grace note is infinitely small, and because I think of it as infinitely small, the truth of the matter is it's neither here nor there. And you could also do it potentially the other way, and it would have the same musical product. But for me, grace notes are a pressing motion. I wouldn't be surprised. Like when I look at people and I'm looking at them and they're playing a grace notes and it seems kind of different, I wouldn't be surprised if some people are actually visualizing the grace note as a lift instead of a press. Okay. But because the grace note is infinitely small, it doesn't matter. The output can be identically excellent.
Yeah.
Regardless of how you think about it.
That's comforting, because I think I've naturally gravitated toward the clap down of the grace note. That's right where I'm trying to get the beat. But I can imagine having an imaginary roof ceiling above my finger and it's hitting that roof that would be on the beat. You know what I mean? So then the lift would be the thing marking. So I can imagine that. So if you'd told me that's how it should be, I'd be like, dang it, I have to change the whole way I play. So I'm comforted by the fact that you're also thinking of the clap down. I'm like, I'll carry on then.
Yeah, it needs to be infinitely small. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
And if you're asking me, I'm going to tell you that a grace note is a press. However, if other people get to it in the same way, as long as it's truly infinitely small, that's the important thing. Okay? If everybody follow me? I'm willing to continue to entertain the debate of where the beat goes specifically. Mm-hmm. All right. Now there's more. So there's more fingerwork fundamentals. We don't just have note changes. We don't just have grace notes. What else do we have?
Oh, for fingerwork, note changes, grace notes. From there, is it just a combination of the two to get ever more complicated note changes and embellishments?
Jim, you're an astute fellow. Yeah. What I was expecting you to say is, well, we also have embellishments, was where I was expecting you might go with next. And you're correct about that. We do have embellishments. Okay. But then what's really important for people to think about, in my opinion, is the fact that all embellishments are just combinations of note changes and grace notes. And that's all that they are. They're like reusable combos of note changes and grace notes. Like playing an embellishment, it doesn't add in any new concepts. Fingerwork fundamentals are just note changes and grace notes played in a certain rhythmic arrangement. That's all it is. That's all it is. And it's really helpful to think of it that way. Everything can be distilled down into that.
It does make it so very approachable.
And it is very approachable. What makes it less approachable is the insistence that it's not real bagpiping unless all the embellishments are in there. Right. And then that tends to get us to hyper focus on embellishments instead of taking the time to break things down and understand them in terms of the actual fundamentals. Let me give you an example. E doubling. How do you play one? We're going to play a G grace note to E. Then we're going to play an F grace note while we're still on E. Okay, but what is that? Let's pretend we're coming from low A. So we have a note change up to the E, and then simultaneously we have that G grace note. So low A to E, note change plus a grace note on E. Done. Now, a lot of people get into the weeds, like exactly what do the fingers look like when you go under the microscope. I think there's some merit to thinking about that. I don't personally, but maybe you could think about the fact that I suppose the first step is going to be to lift both of those fingers, I guess, and then the grace note finger comes down, and so on. For me, all I'm thinking about is the alignment of two things, and they happen at the exact same time. I'm splitting my brain into two things, note change plus grace note, and we want to synchronize them at the same time. Okay. And then we have F grace note after that. Bam. That's it. But can you see how the E doubling is just a combination of note changes and grace notes, and that's it?
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you feel like with that specific example, could a person also, I don't have my chanter here, but so like I could go.
That's a weird looking chanter, Jim.
I know, right? So I could go from low A to I'm doing my note change and a simultaneous G grace note. So those two fingers come up, and then the G grace note snaps down. I'm on E. Would it be equally viable to go, okay, G grace note finger comes up, and right the instant that it snaps down, E finger comes up? Or is that going to,
so
if two of us
my
are doing
answer
this
is
two different
that
ways?
I hate thinking about this. I hate thinking about it. Some people thrive on it, and so it might be a case of different learning styles. Okay, so I'm not trying to hate on anybody, but like for me, I don't want to talk about that. The important thing is that the note change and the grace note happen simultaneously. I personally, man, like my interest in how you get there is so limited, but I get it. I get it though. So
if two people were doing those two different ways, probably if they're both tight, it's still going to sound great, right?
They have to both be tight. That's my whole thesis.
Yeah, gotcha.
And because everything is infinitely small, okay, has no time value whatsoever, okay, all that discussion about the grace notes, it becomes a little bit, like, why are you thinking about that, bro, to me?
I think I'm seeing then that if in my band, for example, if I had a problem with sloppy E doublings and we all got together to talk about it, we might accidentally get lost in talking about whether it should be two fingers up, one down, or one up and then the other up, when really what we should be talking about is we just got to make it tighter. Get there either way.
You got to talk about it in terms of anything that's sloppy, okay? Anytime you say something is sloppy, it means that there's a problem with the fundamentals. And then there's only three fundamentals, which are note change actually occurring in an infinitely small period of time, and grace notes actually happening in an infinitely small period of time. And then the third one is that the rhythm of it is as intended. Those are the only three things. Everything can be broken down into that. So let's take some sloppy E doublings. What makes it sloppy?
It feels too open, but I guess what do I mean by that?
So that's a good feeling to start with. How would you translate what you just said into either a grace note problem, a note change problem, or a rhythm problem? Pretend you only have, it's like trinary code. You only have three. You have to talk about it in some combination of those three things. And it can be done. I know exactly what you mean, Jim. And I have a lot more practice than you. So what does it mean? It seems too open.
Yeah, I'm very interested in breaking this down because, what do I actually mean when I say it seems too open? Let's see.
I can tell you what you actually mean.
Yeah, just tell me, man. Let's save the listeners the trouble and me the trouble of having to think through it. Tell me what am I thinking right now, Andrew?
So the grace notes are too big.
It's all too big.
Okay, so the grace notes are not being played infinitely small.
Getting the chanter sound through. If that wasn't coming through, I apologize. Imagine a sloppy E doubling and then just barely. Andrew did some really good E doublings. But
hopefully people hear this.
It should work. It's just we're using a slightly different platform than we have before, and so this will be I'm just a little bit cautious right now to make sure it's gonna come out right, and so I wanted to insert that note here briefly. If it's not needed, I'll cut it later.
Yep. So anyway, long story short, it's either a grace note problem, or there's a note change problem like a crossing noise, and there could be a synchronization issue between the two things, or it's going to be a rhythmic problem. Or maybe you're rushing the beat or you're behind the beat or something like that. And those are really the only things. And the same thing would apply for tear-Lewis, grips, Crown-Lewis, bubbly notes. I don't know what else we got. Edries.
I want to emphasize
That's all it is.
how useful this is, Andrew. It's setting stuff off in my brain here that like to reduce this down to what you said, a trinary code, right? Where like the issue is one of these three things. It fits in these three things. That's super helpful, not just because it helps us to think, okay, what's going on here? This isn't how I want it to be. It's probably one of these three things. It's also super helpful because it's like, otherwise my list might have been 12 things long. And I would have been like, oh, it could be any of these things. It's a huge problem to try to tackle. And especially in a band setting, like we might spend weeks, months, years of our lives focusing on thing number 9 or 10 and never actually, and get really frustrated because it's not we're not seeing the improvement we want to. So if we just say, look, it's one of these three, focus on those three, and that produces the result. It's just, this is important.
That's where you search. Yeah. Exactly. And it's extremely valuable and it's extremely high leverage to know that anytime I sense sloppiness, right, you now know exactly where to look. It's in one of those three places every time. It's sort of like a cheat code. Okay. Now, it's also why the way we traditionally learn the pipes is not right. We rush through, in the learning process, we rush through to embellishments as soon as we can. Okay. We're perfecting the basic rhythm, the basic note changes, and the basic grace notes is exponentially more important than embellishments. The reason why is embellishments are just combinations of those three things.
Yeah.
Okay. So rushing through to embellishments first becomes a disaster. That is the problem with how bagpipes are taught. That's just how I feel. And by the way, I got a very nice, respectful, critical message from my friend Matt Phelps. I noticed it the other day on Facebook, and he disagrees with me. That's cool. I'm sure you're not the only one, and I have no problem with that. But also, I'm right. Okay, just wanted to let that dangle there. And by the way, like, this is my argument, and there's just so much data to back it up. Now, one of the problems is outliers and people who are successful at bagpipes, like Matt Phelps is a great piper. Jim, you're great. I'm great. Is we accelerated through the process. We accelerated through that process of mastering note changes and basic rhythms and grace notes. We went through that so fast, we probably didn't even notice.
Yeah,
and it probably for us.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. And for us, it was probably, I would just throw Jack Lee and Stuart Little in there too. For us, it was probably the right thing to be working on embellishments soon because we accelerated through, and maybe we even had an aptitude for those other things first. But if you let people without those magic powers rush all the way through to embellishments too soon, what you're going to end up with is exactly what we see, which is really sloppy playing. And people don't have the power or the understanding or the insight to be able to break down that sloppiness. So they just continue to play sloppy and ingrain the habits, which makes it even harder to correct, and so on. It's an infinite regress.
Yeah,
Anyway.
so we got to remember that people who aren't Stuart Little, Jack Lee, Matt Phelps, you,
or
Gordon
Jim,
Duncan, Fred Morrison, and me.
Yeah,
exactly.
And Jim, and Jim,
and me, importantly, and me are just normies.
This is why you have a podcast, Jim. You have a podcast so you can prop up how good you are.
Yep, that's what I'm in this for.
People love it.
I feel like people haven't been noticing how good I am enough, so I'm just going to go ahead and get out there and say it explicitly.
Absolutely. Okay. So anyway, that's a little background. And then the embellishments, by the way, one of the things about the embellishments that we should note is that embellishments are not infinitely small periods of time, are they? Like all embellishments. That's right. Embellishments, because it's a combination of multiple melody notes and at least one grace note. Usually I think all embellishments have at least one grace note and at least two melody notes involved. They're not necessarily changing.
Yeah.
It would be including the note that you land on. That's right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. So anyway, I digress. But my point is, it's important to note that embellishments are not infinitely small, right? They have some length of some kind to them. They're usually quite quick, but they're not infinitely small. Therefore, the beat must go on one of those embellishment steps somewhere.
Yeah.
There's an infinitely small moment inside of an embellishment that will need to align with the beat. And then any preceding parts of the embellishment would come before. Any succeeding, for lack of a better term, would come after there somewhere. Let me give you some examples. On the E doubling, what do we got? The G grace note on the first step of the E doubling is what would align with the beat, right? And then the extra steps would come after. D throw, it's open for debate. Some people play it different ways. I usually, but not always, shoot for the low G to go on the beat in a D throw, but a lot of other people would do it differently. The grip is another one. Do we end the grip on the beat or do we begin it on the beat? Okay. The answer to the question is, doesn't really matter as long as you have a plan and then you're able to control it. That's what really matters. But that's important to note about the embellishments, right? Is that there's a certain point in that embellishment that should align with the beat.
Tell me if this is silly, Andrew. I feel a little bit excited about this because it is something that I've thought about, and I'm hopeful that I might have landed on the right answer. Looking at larger embellishments, anything bigger than a grace note, basically. My thinking has been that the general rule is if I could simplify this embellishment, so if it's an E doubling, like you mentioned, simplified to its most basic, like its ancestor form, it would just be a G grace note. Therefore, play it like it's a G grace note and add the rest of the embellishment afterward. Or like with a D throw.
Correct.
It's the D throw's ancient ancestor would just be a tap on low G. Duh, right? So play it like that
maybe,
and add the rest of the throw after. That puts your beat on the low G. You see what I mean?
Correct. What you're pointing to is that you want to align that specific moment with the beat. Which, as a reminder, the beat is an infinitely small moment in time. It's a target. It's a virtual target that exists in your mind.
Yeah, you're trying to hit that target.
And then by the way, one of the ways to develop that is to take that moment out of your mind. Okay, and then a metronome would be a phenomenal tool for that, right? That's what the metronome does. The metronome takes the beat out of your mind and makes it a physical thing that you can practice aligning things to.
They can be so cruel, though. They can be so cruel.
Nope, they're not cruel. They just tell the truth. Okay,
yeah.
They're not cruel. That's the exact reason a metronome is so valuable. Is it's not cruel or nice or mean, I guess, which is the same as cruel. And they don't love you, and they don't hate you. It's just a thing that clicks.
I feel
right?
like they hate me. Just yesterday,
they don't get nervous.
I was playing with I wanted to do some backing track, like some chord, so like I got on YouTube, typed in like backing track for key of D jig, and hit play on it. And I was trying to play along with it. And I was like, man, I can't stick with the beat. Like when I'm playing by myself, I can mess up a little bit or whatever, kind of expand a little,
right.
But it won't lie to me. It tells me where I'm wrong. It's rough.
Yes, which is extremely important, right? So the metronome is not biased. But anyway, so the beat is an infinitely small period of time. So the next thing I want to get into a little bit is the idea of target practice. And maybe before I get into target practice, but at any given time, there's 3 things that need to all meet at the same time. Like on a regular basis, there'll be up to 3 things that all need to meet at the same time. And those things are going to be the beat. Okay. It's going to be the infinitely small rhythmic moment in time. Right. And then the other thing is going to be a note change. So when we're changing the note, remember, it's not the note itself. So we got the beat, we've got the changing of a note, and we've got a grace note. And on any given beat or at any given moment in the music, those 3 things need to align, right? They need to align perfectly. And if any one of them is even slightly out of line, we're going to have a musical problem. It's probably going to manifest as sloppiness of technique. You following me?
Yep, it's making sense. It's also sounding scary complicated. That's a lot of things to get all lined up at the same time.
Nope, it's just 3. It's more than 1, but it's only 3, and it's only ever 3. So it's a little bit complicated, but it's not that complicated. So at any given time, we need those things to be perfectly lined up. Bam, perfectly lined up. Now the beat, okay, that's the regularly recurring pulse that we have in the music. Like, so we got the beats, right? And we're not talking about the groove yet. The groove takes the beat, splits it up into more pieces, and that would be a good secondary set of targets. But one of the things that's really important to do is to hit those beats accurately every time. And I call it target practice,
Makes
right?
sense. Yeah.
So the beat is the thing that's going to be coming in a regular interval. I'm picturing the guy like in Last Samurai where the archer is riding his horse and hitting a succession of evenly spaced targets. It's so cool. It's kind of like we're hitting a target. By the way, this is exactly what Guitar Hero was all about, right?
Yeah.
You could see your targets coming up and you got to hit your thing to the target. That's what Guitar Hero is. And that's basically all bagpiping is as well. And to distill it down to that can be a really, really useful way of thinking about things. And that's exactly what I do. So when I'm performing, very often I'm just hitting those beat targets.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what keeps my focus. That's my goal. That's what I'm thinking about. In Scott and the Brave, for example, the G grace note on the first low A of Scott and the Brave, that's going to be my first target where everything should perfectly line up with the beat. Okay. And then the second target would be the E grace note of the Terlewith. Okay. The next target would be the G grace note on the C doubling. I can picture it all in my mind. And then we have another C doubling where the G grace note of the C doubling is going to be my target. The goal is to hit those targets every time. And then Jim, have you ever done archery? Do you hit the target every time?
Never. No.
Like, do you hit the bullseye every time?
Not me. No, not me. I'm sure there are some people who can, but not me. No.
And even the people who can hit the bullseye every time, it's not really true, is it?
They haven't hit it every time their whole life. That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, and even when they're shooting the targets, they're never hitting the target exactly. So my point is not that we need to hit the target exactly every time. Okay. My point is that we want to get better and better at hitting like as close to the bullseye as possible every single time. It's just like when we talked about tuning, it's not about perfection. Now, imagine we're playing and we're playing on the beat, right? And imagine I come in early to a beat. Okay. That doesn't mean the game's over. Okay. What that means is I was early to that beat, which means on my next shot, what do I need to do?
Just wait a little longer.
Yeah, wait a little longer and make that slight adjustment, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe I wait too long and I'm late to the next one. That's cool. And I'm going to be constantly making those adjustments back and forth.
Yeah.
Right? Now that sort of thing, this sort of action, that sort of process is exactly what the great players are doing. I'm not sure if everyone thinks about it the same way. I certainly do. It's like target, 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 always adjusting, always adjusting, always adjusting.
Yeah,
right?
Making sense. Yeah.
And then just like when you're driving a car, right? That constant adjustment, once you're in the zone, once things are happening, the adjustments are so minuscule that for all intents and purposes, you're just exactly in that groove all the time. And you're hitting that.
So like targets, like for target practice tend to have, I'm colorblind, so I'm probably bad for this, but it's something like usually there's like a black or red dot in the middle and then maybe blue or yellow around that, maybe white around that, like different colors as you go out.
Sure.
And so,
and those are all just measurements. Those are just measurements of how far you might be away from the exact center of the target.
Yeah. And so like where a song based on the beats per minute, you're going to have like regularly spaced targets, target, target, target. You're saying like you might get like bullseye and then bluish. And so on the next one, you're like, it's like the previous beat gives you feedback for the upcoming beat kind of thing. And you're just always trying to get as tight as you can. I got you. That makes sense.
That's right. So every beat is giving you that feedback. How did I do relative to the target? How did I do? How did I do? And by the way, this is another reason why you want to start slow, right? You want to start slow so that you can practice hitting those targets and you have enough time to process, like, how did that previous target go? Yes. Okay, cool. I was a little behind. So this time I'd be a little more assertive. Oh, that was great. Oh, now I'm too assertive. I need to back off a little bit. And then we're just continuously making those adjustments. I think when you shoot targets with your bow and arrow, you have to steady your body and you have to do your breathing. Yeah. And then you might even you might actually be aiming for a spot that's not the bullseye because like for whatever reason, maybe gravity, maybe the wind, maybe the flex of the arrow or whatever, like for whatever reason, aiming slightly off is what would result in the arrow actually doing the thing that you want. Like sniper rifle movies. You know how they're always adjusting the scope to compensate for the wind and the change in gravity over time and all that kind of fun stuff, right? It's the same with music. So it's like, man, I'm really excited today. So I'm coming in ahead of all my beats.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that's only a problem if you don't have the skill and the expectation that you're going to make ongoing adjustments, right? So like for me, if I get nervous, I recognize right away, yikes, I'm a little jumpy today. And I just do what I would always do, which is make that adjustment rapidly backwards, right? And that's, you're always hunting for that. So you're never just off on cloud nine, because what music is really about is not just reproducing something, right? It's really about ongoing adjustment and improvisation. Even though the material is the notes of the material stay the same, the process of producing it is always a process.
Yeah.
It's never going to be the same way twice. And we're always adjusting for the wind speed and for how nervous we are and for what we ate yesterday and how tired we are and what the drum corps wants to do and this, that, because when you play in a band, it could be the result of someone else's nervousness or something that things actually feel quite different. We're really training
set of variables.
That's right. So when you learn the bagpipes, what you're really doing is you're training the trinary code. You're training the trifecta of things to be as infinitely adaptable as possible.
Yeah.
And to continually hit those targets.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how often in these discussions, Andrew, what we land on is some variation of like, it's a process and it's going to be a process forever. Get comfortable with that.
Yes.
I think it's an encouraging message. At least for me, I take it as such.
I think it's one of the big mistakes of human nature is to miss that, that it's a process. Like grade 1 bands don't deserve all this attention that they're getting, and they're not the only world champions. It's like, okay, even if you're right about that, it would be a process to achieve a healthier balance in the community.
Oh yeah. We talked about that, didn't we?
We did. I did a terrible job talking about that. I remembered.
Hey, Andrew, feel free to tell me if this is stupid, but what keeps coming to my mind as you're talking about the like target after target, looking for the next target, is that the other day I was talking to my second child about the Bop It. Is everybody in the world familiar with Bop It? Is that familiar?
I'm familiar. It's similar to the Simon.
Yeah,
The Simon Says
that's right.
thing.
It's like a toy that says you got like multiple things you could do with it, and it tells you do this thing in rhythm. It says do this thing, now this thing, now this thing, and it speeds up, and you see how far you can go. I had beat a Bop It, like I'd gone as high as it would go, and my kid was like, "How's that even possible?" I was like, "Oh, I'll show you. Show me how you're playing Bop It." And my kids have had musical training, right? So I'm thinking he'll be good at this. Let's see. And he sits down, and he's very reactive to it, right? It's like twist it, and immediately he's like twisting. Bop it, bopping, and I slowed him down.
Right.
He made it like 12. I was like, now wait, buddy, wait, listen to it. It's all in rhythm. Tap your toe. Just tap your toe to it, and you'll be unbeatable. And he's like, really? It's like music? Yeah. So he starts nodding his head to it. And dude, he'd gone pretty far, and I left the room. I don't know how far he got, but just I feel like that was a game version of like what I want music to be doing with my head as well, right?
You're so right about that. And it also reminds me of the strike-ins that we recently talked about. So syncing the moments of the strike-in to the rhythm, okay, is so much better than just trying to perform all the functions as fast as you can.
Yeah, because that's how he was playing the Bop It, was trying to do it as soon as he said it, rather than being in beat with it.
Yes, I think that's true too. Man, I feel like it's true about embellishments too. I feel like people are like, oh, embellishment. Where it's like, no, like find the part of the embellishment that lines up with the beat and just relax and make sure that's the thing that happens.
That definitely happens to me, especially with complicated embellishments. Like basically from anything from a grip on, in terms of how complicated it is, it's very easy for me to be like, here comes that grip. And then like, I just try to do a grip and I lose the feel of the rhythm for sure.
You might also have an ingrained misunderstanding of an embellishment, that it's something that has to happen really fast. You possibly are even picturing it in your mind as infinitely small, and it's not, right?
It's like I want to squish the whole thing into being infinitely small.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is not it at all. And in a lot of cases, it can be quite open. And as long as it's controlled and in the right timing, it might even sound small, or it might even help you play it smaller to stop trying to make it small and instead thinking about it in terms of its trinary code.
Yeah, it's definitely
maybe this episode should be called the trinary code
instead of target practice. But I've already blown the whole budget on that on that graphic thing for the target practice.
But yes, there's just 3 different components that we're playing with, which is and there's really only 2. There's note changes, and there's grace notes, and then they happen at infinitely small points in time. So we have note changes that have to happen at an infinitely small point in time, grace notes that have to happen at an infinitely small point in time. By the way, sometimes they can happen at the same time.
Yeah.
Sometimes they happen at different times. So that becomes like a crazy target where we have all three things at once. But that is the key moment. The other stuff is important, but not as important as that moment.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
seeing it
now-
like that's the anchor. The rest of the stuff works around that key moment.
Exactly. But to identify what moments are more important than others is also extremely important to be able to do that. It's like, aha, these beat moments are the most important. And then the other moments are of secondary importance. Yeah. And the fact that all three line up, it's the lining up, it's the hitting of the target. That's the most important thing. And just doing that is going to represent an 80% improvement in the quality of your technique, just being able to do that.
Yeah,
by
so
the
as
way-
a solo player and in a group for sure.
Yep. And it'll take some time to learn to think about things this way, but pretty soon it'll be like that guy from the Matrix movie that can like see pictures, even though we just see binary code. I'm doing that sort of subconsciously at this point when I'm playing. And that allows me, let's say I was playing in Inverary. Okay. That allows me to just hit those beats. Those are my primary targets. Bam, 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 bam. Now there's other stuff in there. There's other stuff on either side of the targets, or you might be thinking about maybe the groove. So the other subdivisions of the beat, those are extremely important. Okay. But they're not as important as those targets. And then meanwhile, just hitting those when I play at the Worlds, let's say, right? What I want to have practiced and developed to the point where all I have to do is ride my horse and hit those basic targets, and everything else should come out in the wash. That allows me to make adjustments if necessary. Oh, the band's going faster today than they did yesterday. No problem. Just hitting my targets. I barely notice that it's different than it was yesterday. Or maybe we're going to go slow. Or maybe Stuart is going to hold the low A and the slow A extra long, right? But I have my targets and I know where they are. And then the whole game is just Guitar Hero hitting those targets as best as you can, knowing that you're never going to hit them all perfectly, right? You're never going to hit them all perfectly. So it's about just making errors that are as small as possible and continually making those corrections as much as possible.
It's striking me as really interesting how this is like more explanation for the process of simplifying tunes when you need to simplify them. Because like if I took that C doubling in Scotland the Brave that we just talked about, and I take the trinary code, then I strip back the second grace note, so I just have a G grace note. And if I need to go even more simple, I go back to I'm just going to a C. So it's like I just took the trinary thing. I can strip away one element or two elements, so I'm only working on one thing, and then I can add the second element back and add the third element back, and I'm back at full embellishments again.
Exactly right, Jim. And then we have a limited bandwidth of stuff we can think about at any given time. So if I have to choose between you playing an average sounding embellishment, like technically not incorrect, versus you developing that target practice skill and that adjustment skill in a simplified setting, you must choose a simplified setting, right? Because the embellishments are going to be a piece of cake once you have that basic skill.
Yeah.
Instead of it being a hot, confusing mess. So like the simplification can be so important. Or alternatively, you could play tunes that are simple enough at a slow enough tempo where you can integrate some, so you could pick tunes that have very few embellishments. That kind of reminds me of the Scots Wahey method. Right? It's like, that's a tune that has only one D throw in it and everything else is plain. You could build it up that way for sure. Or you could take any tune, apply a process of simplification, right? And that allows us to get that variance in there as well. It's difficult to develop the skill of target practice if you're always doing the same thing over and over again. Then you're learning in a canned goods situation.
Yeah.
Where it's always the same. And that's not the message either. Like the message is that it's always different. And what we're really training is our adaptability in the three elements of the trifecta there. Like we really need to develop our sense of rhythm, our note changes being clean and infinitely small, and our grace notes being clean and infinitely small. And we just need to be able to work that in a wide variety of situations. Jim, I think we should leave it there. I think people get the gist. Hey everybody, Andrew Douglas here from the Piper's Dojo, and I just want to say thanks so much for listening to today's iteration of the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, it would be super helpful to us and to a lot of bagpipers out there trying to find us.
if you could give us a top-notch review on whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast, particularly Apple, iTunes, and Spotify and things like that. Your review would be really, really helpful. So if you have a moment today, definitely go over there and help us out. Other than that, until we meet again on the podcast or somewhere else, thanks again for listening.